welcome everybody. We don't want to waste any minutes, so we want to go right into our primary speaker, Rashida Jones, who everybody knows as the president of MSNBC and the first African American in that role. And I want to start off with just two questions, and then you can answer, and then we can take a few questions from the other attendees. First question is, what do you do as MSNBC president? That's the first question. And the second one is about the pledge that Cesar Conde, who's above you on the pecking order there, made about having 50% of the people at the NBC News Group that he heads be people of color. How do you plan to help fulfill that goal? So it's all yours, and welcome.
Sure, and I appreciate you having me. Thank you, Richard, and thank you everybody for having me here. So your 2 points: one, what is my job? And then number two, 50% challenge. I'll start a little bit with what my job, and my responsibilities are across the MSNBC brand. So that's everything from our linear cable channel, which I'm watching right now. We're looking good tonight. Joy is off, Alicia is in. It's the cable channel. It is our streaming efforts, it's our long form, it's our digital, and it's also how do we continue to broaden our reach and our relevance as the business changes. And you guys know how quickly the business is changing. It's changing for all of us. It's changing in all of our worlds. So my responsibility is MSNBC from a content standpoint, from a business standpoint, and how do we continue to propel ourselves in the future. So on a day-to-day basis, that can mean anything from how do we program our network? How do we want to continue to evolve in new spaces? How do we manage, again, this remains a business, so how do we manage a budget and priorities and staff? You know, I have about 700 people plus or minus that roll up to me. How do we want to lead? Who are we as an organization? One of the things that I've spent a lot of time on in my very short time, because I've only been in this role for 6 months, is how do we want to operate as an organization? Who are we as an organization? How do we treat people? How do we want our communication to be with the greater staff? And so a lot of my job on some days is very strategic, it's very business focused. Some days it's very people focused. What I love about this is I get to do a combination of all of those things. And as I think about my career and how I've charted across time, it's been the times that I felt more fulfilled or more successful have been a combination of all of those things. And I just have to say I'm more than lucky to be able to do all of those things at once in the job that I'm in. So that's just kind of the underline of what my job is. And I would also say it changes day to day. I think one of the things that's always been important to me is not being too far away from the product, not being too far away from the content. And I'm lucky that I get to run a business, but I also get to be really close to the content.
Okay.
As far as the 50% challenge, and we're almost a year, if not a year into to Caesar's 50% challenge. And if I think about where we were a year ago, where, you know, Caesar came in as, you know, the first Latino American to run an organization like ours, a news group like ours. And he had this very big, audacious goal to say, I want our company, and I'm creating metrics to measure this, but I want our company to look like the country that we're measuring. And so the goal is 50% of the organization would be some combination of people of color and women. And I think as I look at even in my own part of the organization, and I'm 1/3 of the news group, it's MSNBC, which I run, NBC News and CNBC, but across the NBC News group, 1 year in, as we look at where our progress has been, it's been clear to us that it's a priority. As we look at new hires, we're somewhere around 46% of new hires being fitting that metric. And so our goal is, how do we make the company represent the country that we cover? And what it made me think about, and some of you guys may relate to this, is when I got into the business, I won't say how many years ago, because it's either not enough years or too many years, depending on who's listening. But I got into this because I wanted to have a voice on how we cover the stories that we cover, who's making the decisions. I wanted to make sure as we're deciding what our greater audience hears, learns, is informed by is representative of the communities that not only that I represent, but the communities that represent our audience. And we have really focused on how do we make sure up and down the ladder, and it can't just be a numbers game, right? Like you can play this a numbers game, and if you get enough early career folks to hit those numbers, we're there. But we really focus on at every single level of leadership. How do we ensure that the people who are covering the news in our communities, but the people who are covered in our communities represent the greater audience?
Okay. All right, we're going to go to our participants now, our attendees. Who has questions?
I'm assuming you guys are not going to be shy today.
Hi, okay, I'll start.
Yes.
Adam Powell, the former VP of News at NPR, former manager of special events and political coverage at CBS. And what I hear from my colleagues now at USC, I run a 50-state campaign on election cybersecurity at USC. What I hear is that MSNBC is basically comfort food for white liberals. And that comes from white liberals. What do you say about that?
Well, I would say I'm not programming towards any one particular audience. I think, again, it depends on who your circle is and from where you're getting that feedback. Our goal is we're covering two things. One is there's a block of our programming that is focused on hard news, breaking news, objectivity, and we, continue to dominate in that space, right? Like that is, I would say, generally speaking, I do not go into my leadership. I don't go into how I, communicate with our talent or our teams with, here's our ideology for the day, you guys go execute that. One of the things that I think has been really interesting, and some of this comes from being a consumer of content, in the sense of when I watch, we're on the readout now, and Joy is off today. She just got back from Jamaica.
Oh.
She's out. One of the things that I as a consumer lean into is I don't want to know what the ideology is around this particular topic. I want to know what Joy Reid thinks about this. I want to know what Rachel Maddow thinks about this. I want to know what Brian Williams thinks about this. And so I actually don't go in and say, guys, here's our ideology for today, and figure out how to communicate that. My focus is the reason people watch is because they want to hear from you, the person, you, the identity. They want to hear your perspective, and your objective is not to communicate a specific point of view. Your objective is to communicate what you think, what you feel about that in those perspective programs. And so to kind of come back to your specific question, I'm not programming to that particular audience that you're talking about. One of the things that I think is unique to us is we get to have a wide variety of points of view. We get to have a wide variety of perspectives. And the goal is to find opportunities for them to communicate that, to express that. And if certain groups are gravitating towards that, that's interesting. But I would also say we are the network with, more African Americans watching, more people of Hispanic background watching, more people of Asian American background watching. So we're not specifically programming towards one ideology. We're programming towards the individuality of our talent.
Okay, next.
Richard,
I have one other question. I didn't understand before about the 50% challenge. I thought it was people of color, but you're saying it's people of color and women.
So 50% women, 50% people of color. It's both.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. And again, obviously there's some crossover. I represent crossover in that space. But the goal is, again, is people of color collectively continue to be, a greater share of the pie. We want to make sure our staff represents that, but women as well. And so the 50% challenge represents both of those.
Okay, thank you. Okay, who's next? Who's got a question?
Richard, I'll go.
Okay.
Hi, Rashida. How are you? I picked up on something towards the end of your remarks in response to Adam's question, which seems to be a departure from the Phil Griffin philosophy, which was more of having the newsmaker as talent versus the journalism. You seem to be focused more on the journalism. How is that going to manifest itself over time? Is there going to be a greater role for journalists in terms of the staffing versus looking for former insert member of Congress, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
So, it's interesting that you say that, because I think the perspective can come from different places. Like, a lot of our lineup right now is populated by people who have journalism as a background, but it's not the only background, I would say. What I'm focused on is less about, what boxes are you checking as far as your previous history, and more about, are we creating a lineup that represents multiple points of view, that represents multiple ideologies, that represents multiple backgrounds. One of the things that I've been really proud about in the very short period, because again, I've only been in this chair for 6 months, is we've been able to bring some voices to the table that maybe haven't, had a seat at the table, who haven't been able to kind of convey or bring their perspective to the table. So rather than just say, like, is it journalists or is it politicians who are at the forefront, what I'm really focused on is, what are the differences in ideologies that we can bring to the table? So again, in the totality of the work that we're doing, you've got a very holistic view of many different backgrounds, perspectives. Some could be journalists, some could be politicians, some could have completely different backgrounds, but we bring to you a holistic point of view.
Thank you.
Next.
I have one quick follow-up, Richard, if I may. A different direction. You've only been in the seat for a few moments, so to speak.
I always like to say I've been in the chair for 5 minutes, but yes.
Yeah. One of the things that all people face when they're the first and things of that nature is also looking across the diversity of the bench behind the camera.
Mm-hmm.
How have you been able to sort of tackle that challenge in terms of who's shaping the morning meetings and deployments and things of that nature, the people who are shaping the coverage of MSNBC? Right.
Yeah, and so I would say, again, as I'm a client and now in my current job responsible for some of this, I know the importance of ensuring that the people who are making the decisions, the people who are around the table, the people who are making these decisions need to be representative of the community that we're covering, right? Like, I think, we can hit certain metrics on camera, and that's more outward facing. But at the end of the day, if you're going to actually, invoke change, it's got to be representative of the people who are making decisions. So for me, I've been very focused on inline promotions. How are we ensuring that the body of our leadership team better represents the entire country that we're covering? We've had several people of color. We've had several women who, in, again, a very short period, I hate to say the word that I hate to position it in a way that we have moved them into roles. What I would rather say is they have far earned the roles that they're in, and they're able to execute that. And so it's one of the things I'm really proud of. We've got definitely more women of color who are in EP roles, and just, if I do a quick tally, I want to say maybe 2 additional in the last couple of weeks, with more opportunities to come. And so for us, it's important. It's not only important for our outward product to represent the country, but it's also got to be those in decision-making roles.
Okay, Atiba, and then Ava Greenwell.
Thank you.
Great, you got it. Thanks, Jeff.
I had this question before Jeff, so just to piggyback off what he said, have there been any diversity and equity and inclusion training or courses like that have helped with representation?
Yeah, so not only have we done the training with our core team, we've also supersized our diversity, equity, and inclusion team to focus more on how do we create a pipeline to bring people up. So I don't know if you guys know Yvette Miley. Yvette runs our DEI program, and part of her focus is how do we, not only are we focusing on finding opportunities or opening kind of the runway for leadership to ensure that people of color are being considered at the same level as people who are not part of that demographic, which I think is all we're asking. We're only asking for we should be considered in the same way. But not only that leadership and executive level, but how do we create a pipeline so the kid at Hampton University, where I went, and in their freshman year, knows what the path is to become me. I don't want them to be me. I want them to be better than me, but I want them to know what that path looks like. And so we've done, again, in a very short period, a lot of work. Some of those things, NBCU Academy, which created a formal partnership with HBCUs, which I hold near and dear to my own heart, universities that have majority Hispanic populations, Asian American populations. How do we communicate and how do we create a pipeline at those universities and with those students to ensure that they know where they can go, they know what the opportunities are, they know what the track is, and that people like me can kind of reach back and help those guys. And so that's been a really big part in the last, year of our 50% challenge. It's at all levels. It's the level of people who are considering coming into this industry, people who are in the industry and want to move into more leadership levels, and how do you take that leadership and move them into executive levels?
Okay, Ava Greenwell.
Hi, Rashida. So good to see you. And
hi there.
Thank you so much for being here. So as you may know, I'm the author of this book, Ladies Leading, the Black Women Who Control Television News.
I love it. I think I saw this first with Odyssey, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't know. But yeah. As you know, Black women are certainly getting a lot of publicity these days, whether it's in sports, whether it's whether it's Kim Godwin, especially in these leadership roles. So happy to see that. So that's the first thing. Congratulations, I wanted to say.
Thank you.
The other question I wanted to ask is, I know from my research that Black women also experience all kinds of microaggressions because of the intersection of race and gender. What has surprised you most about being in this current leadership role? I know that you've been in many leadership roles prior to now, but this is, this is up there. And so what can you say about what has surprised you the most, and what advice might you give other Black women who are trying to reach that pinnacle?
Yeah, so it's so interesting you say that. And Kim and I had dinner 2 nights ago. It's Thursday, 2 nights ago, and we compare notes because these are things we talk about. I will say I have frankly been surprised by how our work collectively has preceded us. And I would say, rather than the challenge be convincing people that we deserve to be in the room and that we deserve to be in the roles that we're in, you get to a point in your career where people are convinced before you have to do the work. And I think I would say, both in my experience, and I think Kim would support this too, when you've had the legacy and the experience that you've had, you come into some of these rooms and you no longer have to convince people. Like, the title goes further than I think either one of us probably expected it to go. So that would be one piece of it, but it doesn't mean the work is done. It just means that this meeting. Sorry, I'm hearing an echo here. There we go. It just means that we don't have necessarily the same kind of flexibility for missteps. We don't have the same benefit of the doubt. But I think, again, for the Kims and for me and people who have gotten to this point, we already go into it realizing that. And so we know that there's not only do we not have necessarily the same space or timeline to try to figure some things out, but the bigger thing is, I think we both realize everything that we do, everything that we say is setting the stage and paving the road for the people who come behind us. And I think that level of responsibility is different from folks who are my peers who are in similar roles. I know that there is another journalist. Like, I literally had a call a couple of days ago with an intern. She is an intern. She's still in college. She goes to UNC Chapel Hill. She's had its own set of history in the last couple of months. And I ended my call with her and I said, so I'll be working for you in a couple of years. And I meant it. Like, I remember people saying stuff like that to me before in the past. And I really felt like the reason I'm doing this is for the Sierras of the world. Sierra is going to run this industry. Sierra is going to run this industry one day. Sierra is watching my playbook and figuring out how to perfect it. And I think that responsibility that the folks who come behind us, because there are so few of us who they see as a representation, we can't get this wrong because they're the ones who are going to really nail this.
Okay, last question, Neil Justin.
Hi, Rashida. Neil Justin. I cover TV for the Minneapolis Star Tribune.
Wonderful.
What role do you think cable news has played in the division of this country?
It's a tough question because I think in some pockets, it is a business decision to divide. I think I would say this, and I say it as objectively as I can, because obviously it's the organization that I run. But I think on our side, I don't go into my day-to-day. I don't go into my strategy with how do we create division because it's good for business. And so I think just the nature of where we are, there are going to be multiple sides of the equation. I think the fact that some entities have decided to make that a business strategy is unfortunate. It almost inadvertently positions us as the opposition to what they do. But I think, I think about things like right now where we're dealing with this whole vaccine challenge, and how do you persuade those who are either undecided or uncomfortable with getting vaccinated to do what I think the science, I say this with the science backing, the science proves that there is value to us protecting ourselves because it protects the greater organization, the greater population. How do you do that in a way that doesn't lend itself to be divisive? And so I would say this, like, I think when I would use this comparison. There's the movie Unbreakable. It is a M. Night Shyamalan movie. I'm a movie person, for those of you who don't know this. And one of the lines of the movie is you have to have a villain so you can know who the hero is. I think in some cases, villains have been decided and inadvertently, like another side has been created. And at the end of the day, I would tell you this, and there's no like backdoor or secret meeting where we're saying, like, how do we position ourselves despite what it does to the country, despite what it does for the health and safety of people? How do we position ourselves for the greater good, for numbers or for the business? We don't operate that way. And it goes back to one of the questions I had earlier, which was, I do not create a prescribed direction for our teams to say, we believe in this, you go figure out how you think about it. We're far less prescribed in that way. And I think because of that, it's not our intention to divide. I think there are multiple points of view and sides to this, but I do not go into leading and managing through a lens of how do we divide.
I love the Unbreakable comparison, but I have to mention that movie didn't end well, Rashida.
It did not end well. But again, if you follow my point, which was the idea of, in order to have one side, you have to have the other side. And that's not how we lead.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Okay. Coming too, so.
Oh, good. Well, thanks for sharing time with us. We appreciate that. And good luck. Oh, I also forgot to mention that this is the 25th anniversary of MSNBC. So congratulations to you and all of your colleagues.
Thank you so much. And again, being in the chair at the point where we're at 25 years is unbelievable. We're really proud of the work that we do. We're really proud of the support that we get. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it.
All right. Well, come back again.
Anytime.
Okay. All right. You all heard that. Okay. Thank you very much. Let's give her.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Now we're going to move right along because we have a schedule here. We wanted to have a discussion to be led by Dr. Ava Thomas Greenwell and Anzio Williams of NBC Station Group. And they have some managers with them, including Ramon Escobar, who I see right in my screen of CNN. So I'm going to turn it over, Anzio. I can't see you you must be on one of my other screens. But
I'm here.
All right, good. All right. Oh, there you are. Okay. All right. Take it away.
All right. Absolutely. And it's a pleasure to share this panel with Dr. Greenwell, and who has, as she said, has a book out, and a lot of great topics in the book. Some of those we like to touch base with here, but I saw Ramon Escobar on the screen, who's the Senior Vice President of Talent Recruitment and Development with CNN. I saw Mr. Josh Eure, who's the Vice President of Live Programming for the Black News Channel, and also Mr. Ben Hart, President and General Manager of WGJCL, the ABC station and her station in Savannah. So welcome all of those guys and lady to the stage. Listen, I guess I'll get started. Dr. Greenwell, I want to ask you the first question, here, and because we have been talking about it, has been the theme, and just hearing from Rashida there, what's happening right now with the explosion of Black women in the industry. What's your read and take on that?
Well, I wouldn't call it an explosion. I think they certainly are getting a lot more attention than in the past. But I think we're at that time now. My book really explores some of the first Black women who became news directors, assistant news directors, executive producers, particularly in television news. So they started going in the late 1970s, in the 80s, and the 90s. So we now have a mature cohort that we can actually look to and start to also see some differences in terms of how they're being treated. So a lot of those women who were going in the 70s and 80s experienced all kinds of, I would say, macroaggressions, not microaggressions, but macroaggressions. People didn't expect to see them as leaders in the newsroom. Now you have sort of Rashida's generation, and we're starting to see these women now ascend to some of the highest heights, if you will, in television news. And that's why I asked her the question about what has surprised you the most. The fact that she's saying, hey, we're in the room. It seems like people expect us to be there a little bit more than maybe they did 20, 30 years ago. That is progress. But the thing that still concerns me, of course, is she said, we can't get this wrong, right? So there is a lot of additional pressure, I think, that is placed, particularly on Black women, to not make a mistake. Because as one woman told me, the daily pressure of being in those leadership roles is, if I make a mistake, then I will mess it up for the next generation. And she said they would say, hey, we put the Black chick in charge, and she couldn't cut it. And so it'll be another 10 years before they put somebody else, Black and female, in those positions. So again, while there has been progress, I think that there is still work to be done.
I can appreciate that thought, but I would tell you, as a Black man and who have led several newsrooms all around the country, that pressure crosses the sex line. I mean, that's, who would anybody put in that charge, put in charge of that many people in a large organization, we certainly can expect that type of pressure.
Yeah, but I would say though, given the history of marginalization of women and Black people in this country, there's this double burden, so to speak, double backpack, because they're not expected to necessarily be in that role. And the fact that she's feeling as though people are expecting it a little bit more, they're not questioning as much as they might have in the past, that shows some progress. But to your point, this is a rough business. I'm a former on-air television news reporter, and so I know, newsrooms can, spit you out, chew you up, spit you out. And that's regardless of what identity you have. And so just think about that extra that some of the Black women are experiencing.
So when I use the term explosion, of Black women in leadership roles, I was also talking about, you added Brevette Curry, who is most recently named the news director at the ABC station in Durham, North Carolina. You have a Renee Washington, who's a news director at the NBC station in Los Angeles. NBC has, 4 Black female, assistant news directors, in the company. And I'm sure we're going to talk to, we're going to bring Ramon into the conversation here as well, too, because we're not only talking about, Blacks, but we're also talking about, brown brothers and sisters and Latinos. Ramon, I've noticed that you guys have started promoting on air the number of diversity people that you have working at CNN. You want to talk about that a little bit? I think I saw the one promotion where it had your Asian reporters and maybe a Latino one as well. Still got Ramon?
Let's all say it. I'm on mute. Happens every time, doesn't it? Thanks, Anzio. And real quick, just Richard, thank you for inviting me to this fantastic group. It is always a refreshing and almost inspirational thing to be with your peers of color in a business that still increasingly just doesn't look like this Zoom. So thank you for that. It means a lot, and it's exciting to be part of this. And we're all in this fight together, I hope. And these types of events, I think, just reaffirm all the work we have to do. Anzio, yeah, I mean, look, you know, the promo you might have seen, that was in the wake of the situation with the, you know, where Asian hate really bubbled to the surface after those shootings at the spa. And that really was organic because it came from our Asian talent. They sent a lot of notes to me about this, and they were, in particular, they were proud of the fact that we had so many folks who understood the story in a different and profound way. If you remember, that story had a really important component about fetishizing Asian women in a certain way and talking about a massage parlor. I mean, that's some sticky stuff. And they were able to tell that story in a very powerful way. And not just one, not just two, but many of our on-air talent behind the scenes folks who are Asian. So they were very proud of that. I made note of it. You know, Jeff Zucker, my boss, made note of it. And we put it together, and they really wanted to do it. So we were proud of that. But, you know, most recently, yeah, I mean, we've made a big push in the last several years, you know, not only on the correspondent side, where we're at, you know, at 40% basically of all our correspondent corps people of color. I think it's the most of any network. And then our anchors, we're pretty proud of what just happened in terms of what we've done there, from Laura Jarrett in the morning to Victor Blackwell in the afternoon to Don Lemon at night. And then what we've, Ana Cabrera, you know, is our Hispanic anchor during the day that we just put in place, and Boris Sanchez on the weekend, and Frederica, and you know, what we've done, you know, bringing Jim Acosta into that. So yeah, we're very proud of that. But, you know, Rashida said something interesting that I really believe is core here. And that is that you have to, if you profess to be something to your audience, then you have to look like your audience. And I think at CNN, our belief is, you know, we consider ourselves the global leader in news. We're a very global organization. And so if we're going to be the global leader in news, you have to look like the world. So we spent a lot of time on that. You know, we're very proud of where we are. There's always more work to be done, but the real emphasis for us has been behind the scenes. Anzio, I know you and I share this passion behind the scenes, whether it's, you know, VPs and executive producers and senior producers and everyone down to PA, because as Rashida said, I interview a lot of interns. And the reason I do is because they're going to be our boss in about 5 years now. It used to be, you know, oh, in 20 years, no. Now you can go from intern to, you know, running a Silicon Valley company in 3 or 4 years. So the way we're all going. So we've placed a tremendous emphasis there, as you know, because we are in the same circle.
How about the, can you just comment real quick on what I call the run on Black managers and the folks seeking, you know, more Black folks behind the scenes in our newsrooms, and I think a lot of people. So
I do, and I think it's fantastic. I think that this is the best problem in the world to have, and the reason it's such a great problem is for two reasons. One, it's long overdue, and we know it. But two, those of us who are good at it have the advantage, because, you know, I've always told people there's only two ways to recruit people. There's only two ways to hire people. Either you steal them or you grow them. And I think you got to do both, right? You got to be looking for the great people in the marketplace, but you can't, the problem that we've all experienced and what I evangelize is if we just let the marketplace do what it does, forget it. We're all screwed, because the marketplace has been proven over the last 50 years that it will not get this right unless there's some sort of disruption. So yeah, you can go and we can all play the game of let's steal, Anzio, how many times I've tried to hire you, for God's sakes, and a lot of other people on here, right? But if you look at that, it's a so-called small group. No, you got to expand the group, grow your own, grow more people, develop more people. So I think it's great that there's this new competition. It's going to raise salaries. It's going to raise profiles. I couldn't be more excited, and for my friend Kim Godwin to get that role and seeing Rashida succeed is incredible. And what's going on and what's happened at CBS. I mean, all those things are great. All the work that's been going on with the senior leaders at our place, but it's not enough yet. We have to grow more. And I think an internal component strategy is as important as external. I got some feedback there. Sorry, Anzio, can you hear me?
That's all right. No. Thank you. That was good there. I want to bring in Josh, Eure, and Ben Hart for this next one, because both of these guys received their new positions, what I call since George Floyd, and and after George Floyd, and so we'll use that line, that date line there as a point, as a talking point of just this run on Black managers. And Josh can certainly talk about that. He is, the vice president of live programming for the Black News Channel. Josh, I feel like everybody I call to hire, they tell me they already got a new job and they started at the Black News Channel. You want to talk a little bit about you guys' efforts and who you're targeting?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me, Richard and Anzio. And before I respond to that question, I'd just like to take a moment to ask this group for your prayers for a trailblazer, Javita Moore at WSB, who announced today that she has a very aggressive form of brain cancer. And so I would ask for your prayers for Javita. The Black News Channel, our target audience is Black and brown people. We don't lean right, we don't lean left, we lean Black. And what we're really trying to do is make a case for an underserved community, to really tell stories through the lens of impacting Black America and brown America for sure. In terms of the organization, I joined about 6 months ago, and Prince O'Hare, who was our CEO, joined he's been there for about a year. When he started, I believe it was 50 employees. Now we're up to about 250 employees. So there's been an explosion, if you will, of hires. We're rolling out shows constantly, but we're really proud of what we're doing. And for me, it's easy to go to work every day because I get to be unapologetically Black, and everything that I do from my editorial process to how we shape our stories. So my job is easy this time around.
Congratulations, Josh. We've known each other now. It feels like we're coming up on about 30 years.
That's correct.
I hear how long we've known each other, and I could not be more proud of you and all the folks at the Black News Channel. Mr. Ben Hart, you're in a new role, president, general manager of a television station. Full disclosure, Ben, we worked together in 2 different cities, in New Orleans and in Sacramento. Ben, can you talk a little bit about the pressure of being a Black man, general manager, coming from the news route, not the sales route, and what you're doing, and that pressure to have your staff look like you? I see Ben. I thought I saw him up here. Okay. So we don't have Ben, or maybe he's having problems here. Hopefully he's not on mute, but we'll keep going because I have plenty of other questions. And in 5 minutes here, we'll stop and ask some, let some of the audience ask questions as well. Dr. Greenwell, I want to go back to you because I know a lot of talk continues to be around in your book, the hair talk. And I know we got men here, and this can be a tricky, big tricky subject with men. They probably, are already mad that I'm bringing it up. But this idea of, I'm going back to the word explosion of Black women, letting it free, doing what they want to do on TV. What do you think that represents? And that the fact that now that is acceptable?
So it's certainly a new kind of freedom. And when I was an on-air reporter, I didn't even consider wearing natural hair. Since I've been in the academy, of course, it doesn't matter as much. But I think what I found interesting about even the women behind the scenes often felt pressure to wear straightened styles or styles that would be considered more European. So the fact that we have this photo in 2019 at NABJ in Miami with all these women, Black women who are wearing their hair natural says, again, there's some progress. I mean, even in my market here in the Chicago area, it's still relatively rare to see Black women be as natural as possible. But I know in other markets, they are doing that. And I applaud it because what it has been constricting, you know, in the past, that women, Black women in particular, people with textured hairstyles had to straighten their hair. And so I think it's really about what you get used to. I work with students who go to South Africa, who work in television stations and places there. And there's not this necessarily issue of hair. There certainly is this dominant European sort of style in Africa as well, but there's more variety. I mean, you certainly see people with locks, with braids, bald, all kinds of hairstyles. And so I think the fact that we are moving in that direction, as slow as it is a positive about people's identity and how they can really bring their true selves to work every day.
Open it up to Ramon and Josh.
I couldn't agree more with the doctor's assessment. You know, in my role, I also oversee talent in terms of look and you know, aesthetics and things of that nature. And this is critical that we as leaders lead the way here and make it clear that if people want to wear their hair naturally, that's who they are, and that's you know, an expression of their authentic self. We have been very, very clear about this at our organization. But it's interesting, there are a couple of wrinkles here that I find are pretty interesting. We worked hard also to get some folks behind the scenes on the hair and makeup team. If you're going to be diverse, you should be diverse in every area. And on our hair and makeup team, we're diverse. And I, you know, having a sister and who's Latina, who has you know, natural hair, and then having dealt with this for a long time, you know, I know that women's hair, especially brown and Black women, I mean, it's work it takes, you know, there's a lot that they want to do. You want to support them. And I looked at our hair and makeup team, and we really built an organization that I think is inclusive. Those folks help the rest of the team, you know, deal with each person's issues in terms of what they need. I mean, you have to build an organization to support people. And I think you know, a lot of organizations don't have the internal support, and then they look at this and they don't even know what to do. And it freaks them out. And I think that this is a place where we can all be leaders and push this, because I think it's, I don't think it should be an issue in anywhere, in any of these networks and TV, but I still think it is. We've worked hard in our area to push hard that natural hair. I've been to several speaking groups, especially when there's young brown and Black people where I speak and mentor. And this is a question that comes up a lot. And I've seen other executives actually counsel them incorrectly to not be themselves, to act like something else. And I've seen women do it, you know, white women do it, giving them bad advice. So I think we have work to do here. I don't know if the doctor would agree. I think we have work to do, but I think we have an opportunity to lead here.
Well, you know, and Anzio, I would add, you know, again, a rising tide lifts all boats, right? So when Black women are allowed to be themselves, then other people can be themselves, including Black men who might want to wear a beard because, you know, having to shave every day causes all kinds of problems. Or maybe they might want to wear locks or what have you. And again, this idea that it's inappropriate, it's unprofessional, it's really outdated. I think if we're looking to have a new generation of people of color take on these roles, both in front of the camera and behind the camera, we have to be open to all kinds of styles. And, you know, just like beauty is in the eye of the beholder, professionalism is in the eye of the beholder as well. So again, we're moving in that direction, but I still think there certainly is not a 100% embracing of that. I mean, when we talk about hairstyles,
I would say that I'm probably about 50% as a part of it that I disagree with. That's my tease, because I'm gonna let Josh go. Josh, you go, and then I'll come after Josh and round mine out.
I do have some thoughts on this. You know, my first thought is I agree with what Ramon and Dr. Greenwell have said about the freedom aspect of it. because certainly we want to convey a message, of people that look like me. You bring them into the tent, they're more likely to come back and watch your programming again. But at the same token, you also want consistency, right? So I think there's a delineation from an anchor as versus a reporter. An anchor, you're building a rapport with a person. So as we go into the natural hair and embracing that, you don't want the look to change week to week to week, right? You kind of want consistency with that. Whereas, because that's the front facing part of your organization. But I also think it's interesting. I've been in this business for about 30 years, and for a very long time, women of color were not allowed to wear natural hair, but I see media organizations making a shift. And I think it's interesting that it's happening in this social justice aspect of life that we're facing right now, but I'm all for it. I think it's something that more media organizations should embrace more of.
Well, I think the other issue too is other industries are also having to grapple with this as well. You have laws now, the Crown Act. You have different states that are also enacting laws about how children cannot be, suspended from school because they wear their hair a certain way. So I think all of that is contributing to this conversation about how one can wear one's hair.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. My quick thought here is, as a person who is responsible for hiring and hired people for years and counsel a lot of young kids that's getting into the business, I've seen their reels with right off the top of their reels where they may have 5 or 6 different hairstyles. I've sat in the room with white men who was responsible for hiring, and I'm saying, hey, here's somebody, and they think it's a different person. They don't know because there's so much that's there. So as I always tell people, sometimes we have to do what we got to do so we can do what we want to do. And I hope we all, remember that the great Monica Pearson, who was at WSB, in Atlanta, who, she was it. She was the one that did it. Monica would go from, a red short dude, and then she might have a blonde wig on the next week, but she worked to get to that point. She had to get there. And I think some of the, these younger kids that's coming in, don't quite understand it just yet. So I am having that conversation. And I quite often tell people, listen, I'm married to a Black woman, my mama's Black, I got, 3 Black sisters, and I get it. My wife, I never know which wig she's gonna have on from day to day or what style she's gonna have. I understand that. But as Josh said, when we're in the business of, your people remembering you and familiarity and people becoming comfortable with you, we have to make sure that there is somewhat of some consistency. I don't care if it's, what kind of hairstyle you got. I just need it to be consistent. And that consistent part is something that I think can't be lost in that. And I see a hand here. I can't read my Miss
Tanette.
Yeah. Great discussion. Love the insight, but I wanted to go back to something. Well, Anzio, you picked it up too. I think Joshua brought it up first about consistency, but I know for me, I do wear natural hair. I go back and forth sometimes just to give my hair a break, but I've talked to sisters. I'm a print journalist, but I talked to sisters in TV, friends of mine, and the struggle is they say with natural hair, and I know from experience, sometimes your hair has a mind of its own. And some days you may get up, and I know this happens to me, and I'm like, whoa, I can't get those curls to, hold the shape they had yesterday, or it's more humid today. So now I've got this big fro, and, and so I look totally different. So sometimes going to a wig, or
you want to get the mail,
even straightening it, sometimes just to, work through those issues. Sometimes it's difficult to be consistent once you make that choice to be natural. So how do you address that? I mean, I'd like to hear some
I just, but to pick up on what Danette's saying, I would just like to disagree with with all due respect, my two male colleagues. And just point out, once again, with all due respect, it's two men telling women how they should be wearing their hair. And once again, I'm just want to be cognizant of that, because as a man, I want to be very careful about telling, I mean, what do you mean by consistency? And I'm just saying.
Yeah, I'll be more, so let me answer, since, you know, I did use the word consistency. So let me bring that home. So consistency means you can't, you know, if you're an anchor, to go from, you know, a bob to braids that are down your, you know, past your shoulder. That's what I mean by consistency. When you are in front of the camera every day, it changes your look, right? So I just think it's worth having a conversation with your management team to see, hey, are we all on the same page with this? Because that's what I mean by.
But Josh, this is some of the stuff that then leads to women going in and straightening their hair or doing something that damages their hair. The amount of hair damage that takes place with some folks is the expense, what it does to their hair. And I'm just saying some of this, I don't know.
So Ramon,
could I say something? Could I say something here? I think one of the issues we haven't talked about is the fact that one of the reasons television stations want that consistency beyond just, you know, looking at the person who looks the same, they also pour a lot of money into the advertisement related to that.
Ramon knows that very well.
I do. I have
all those kinds of things. And so I would say we're in this moment of flex, right? Or flux, if you will, where yes, we want people to be themselves and as natural as possible, but we know it's not completely there yet. So if a student came to me and said, hey, how should I wear my hair? I would say the way it's probably going to get you a job. That's how you should probably wear it until you have the ability to have that freedom. But I also think those of you who are in management as Black and brown people, you have now the ability to disrupt that narrative of us always having to have straightened hair. So I'm not suggesting everybody should wear straightened hair, natural hair. You wear the kind of hair that works best.
No, and I wasn't saying, definitely wasn't, I didn't want to convey the message of straightening your hair. That's not what I'm saying at all. I want people to be now. I mean, I think it's great women wear their natural hair, right? I mean, especially on my network, that's more empowering for you to wear your natural hair. What I'm saying is,
consistency. Absolutely. Yeah, but we also know that culturally, Black women do change their hair all the time, every day.
And that's right. We know
that's a part of our culture.
But
and
you hit it on the head.
So it being in that state of flux right now, I think we need to move into a direction. And it's unfortunate we still have to even talk about this. I mean, in some ways. But clearly,
we're talking about helping ourselves. We're talking about helping those young adults, and it's not always a one size fits all. But having been the person that spent, you know, close to $200,000 on a campaign, only for the anchor to come back the next day, you know, now she's on billboards, buses, and you know, bus stops, you name it. And then she decided she was going to cut it off and go Holly Berry. Yeah, so that's why I tell people, you know, listen, do what you got to do, so you can do what you want to do. I know, Mr. Prince, I know we're over. I see some hands.
Can I just break in? I mean, I cover television. I don't make television, and I'm not female. But I will say that one thing that I've noticed, this touches on a larger issue that I've noticed, which is that those of us who've been in the business for a while have accepted certain things to get to where we are. And then younger people come to us and say, you should not accept those things anymore. And I think it's important, particularly for the people in this forum who can make decisions, who are power brokers, to challenge this stuff. Don't just accept that people have to change their hairstyles or even keep their hairstyles consistent to get a job when you're helping decide who gets that job. Part of what we need to do is educate the audience, and educate the audience that, you know, there may be this Black woman who's featured in a campaign, but guess what? Her hairstyle might be different next week. You know, Scarlett Johansson plays the Black Widow, and she has 5 different hairstyles. They're not all in the campaign. I think we have to be more open to educating the audience and letting the talent present themselves the way they feel they need to present themselves when it makes sense. And it's bothering me that we're accepting some of the traditionalisms of this moment because it's something that we always had to put up with when we were coming up. It's time to change it.
Agree 100%.
And to
Well,
your
listen,
point, I think that's the point
Eric-
that I was trying to make, Eric, is that those managers who are on here do have the power to disrupt that narrative and to make some changes. You just have to open your mind, right? We all, depending on the age you are, might have grown up in the business where this is the way it was. I mean, I see students every day, and you're right, Eric. Students today, they're like, I'm not taking that. I'm not going to put up with it. Now, they may face news directors who say, well, I'm not hiring you too. So
And that's my
they
point.
have to know that reality.
Well, then
right?
they shouldn't work at those places. They
Right, they don't have to work at those places, but that's
Absolutely.
my point, guys.
Well,
It's
and those
exactly my
places may
point.
not, those places need to expand their audience beyond the old folks who are dying off.
And listen,
and the
and
way
that might be
and the
the
way
problem.
you do that is by presenting talent that looks like the young people. That
Look
they
at
are
one,
surrounded by.
but one of the comments in the chat says, I'd rather go into print because of this conversation. That's what we got to stop. We got to make this a welcoming place and a welcoming culture for people. And what Eric said is 100% agree with.
Well, listen, guys, I opened myself up to it because I was kind of the moderator and got the hot topic going here because I know it always kind of gets everybody, and I'm sure some of the anchors that have worked for me look back at this and laugh. It's like, why did he go there? Listen, Mr. Richard Prince, you want to come back and you give me direction on where to go?
Claudette, she's had her hand up for a while.
I
Claudette,
didn't see it. I'm sorry.
yeah. Go ahead, Claudette. Unmute yourself, please.
Sorry about that. Claudette James, Truth in Education and Journalism. And what I would love to do for everybody right now, I'm going to take off my hat. Okay. I'm going to take off my hat. And I need to share that I definitely agree that we must be more open to educating the audience, because we need to be very, very mindful of the stress that we're causing for women of color, the young people coming in. There seems to be sometimes an attitude that if European women change their hairstyles, you may not hear too much. But if a woman of color changes her hairstyle, she could potentially be trying to be too black. So as you have these conversations, please be very, very mindful of why it is important to educate the audience. And thank you for letting me have my say.
Okay,
Thank you.
somebody else had their hand up. I can't see who it was though.
Sorry,
Okay.
I missed you, Claudette.
Okay. We're sort of out of time for this segment, but we can always come back to it at the end of the introduction. So thank you very much. Now it's time to raise a glass or get something so we can toast our Pulitzer winners, or make believe you have a glass at least. Tammy Payne and Jamal Payne, who are here representing the Pulitzer-winning book for biography on Malcolm X by their dad, Les Payne. Yep, holding it up there. And we have a bonus, and that is Faith Childs is here as well, who was the agent who worked with them on this book for so many years. So let's congratulate them, let's give them a toast, and then we'll hear from them what they want us to take away from that whole experience.
Woohoo!
Hear, hear.
Hear, hear.
All right, congratulations. Okay, let's Jamal and Tammy. What do you want us to take away from from the book and the experiences you've had and subject matter and everything else?
First, I'd like to thank you, Richard, for having us here. My mother is following us on Facebook, so I want to Violet, my mother. But for my family and I are beyond ecstatic for the recognition of my father, Les Payne's brilliance, his dedication, his commitment, his storytelling, his journalism, and his sheer desire to tell this very necessary story and give us a fuller, richer view of one of the greatest and most misunderstood Americans, one Malcolm X. And none of this is possible without the Herculean effort of my sister sitting right next to me, Tamara Payne, who worked alongside my father on this long journey, close to 3 decades, and saw this project all the way to completion. I am absolutely humbled by her tireless effort, her command of the material, her commitment to protect our dad's voice, and her determination that this project would be finished by any means necessary. This acknowledgement, along with a lifetime of accolades, achievements, accomplishments, rightly cements my father's legacy and his place among the immortals of journalism. And it also introduces the world to my sister, Tamara Payne, Pulitzer Prize winner. And I heard Ramon from CNN and Rashida, you know, nobody has reached out to my sister as a contributor, but she is definitely taking offers. And as am I. And anyone else that wants to tell. And now I'll let my sister, you know, take the Zoom. Pulitzer Prize winner.
And this is my little brother, right? I also want to say hello to my mother. And I also want to just say that, you know, the takeaway for this book was the opportunity for what my father looked for in doing a book about Malcolm. He didn't actually want to do a book about Malcolm. He felt that we knew everything we needed to know about Malcolm through his autobiography and his speeches. And this opportunity, when he met Malcolm's brothers through his childhood friend who introduced him to one of them, and he listened to their story, and he was learning he's just fascinated by the childhood stories that his brother told him about them growing up in the house of Louise and Earl Little. And Dad came back, and actually I came back from China on a holiday visit, and he wouldn't stop talking about his meeting with his brother. And then he found out from his colleague and friend, Gil Noble, who hosted a show called Like This here in New York, that you know, the brother he should speak to is Wilfred. My father had spoken with Filbert, so my father went back to speak to Wilfred, and he found out even more details. And the difference between speaking to Filbert and Wilfred is that Filbert was a couple years older than Malcolm, while Wilfred was 6. And Wilfred was also Malcolm's best friend and confidant throughout his life. And through these two brothers, what we learn is what their lives were like in those early years. And what we also find out is that Malcolm had a family. And we didn't really understand the details and what that meant to grow up in a household where the parents are Garveyites and organizing for the Marcus Garvey movement, UNIA, and the history that goes with that. And this book was an opportunity to place Malcolm in the context of his family, who showed him his history and his connection to Africa, as well as the self-determination spirit of Marcus Garvey. And so on, that also had gone into the other movements, such as the Moorish Science Temple, as well as the Nation of Islam. So it was an opportunity to do that, but it was also an opportunity to place Malcolm in American history, not Black history, American history. And that is really what we're focusing on. And that the book came out in 2020 at this time when America is going through this upheaval. And this book really helps to put into context how we got to this place through the 20th century struggles. And it was a great opportunity for me when my father asked me to work with him 30 years ago. I saw this as an opportunity because I knew the kind of journalist my father was, and I wanted to watch him work and learn the craft from him. And I did. And in the beginning, it was, learning the craft from him, but later on, it was about sharing these discussions, sharing the discussions in the direction that the story was going, following the facts, following the story, not directing the story. And in doing this, what we learn is not just about Malcolm's family, but many of our families. And when you read this book, you learn about that and the place in history. And we see similar stories in our own families. And it even crosses color lines and culture lines. And I hope that when people read this book, that they see that and they have that takeaway, and it becomes a more personal and a clarion call to standing up. And a lot of the topics that we're even having today, I mean, Malcolm was also confronting that during his lifetime, he was talking about, hey, who taught you to hate yourself? And so on and so forth. So this is a great opportunity, working with my father.
it became heavier weight on my shoulders, I have to say, when Dad started calling this his life's work. And then when he passed away, we were so close to the finish line. And then it became my responsibility to make sure that, you know, this saw publication, and it did. And I wanted to make sure that it saw publication and it's receiving the accolades that it's receiving, from the National Book Award to the NAACP Image Award, as well as the Pulitzer. And I'm just, you know, thrilled that the book in my father's voice is ringing throughout this work, but also it is very bittersweet for me that he is not here to see this. But I am very proud that his career in journalism is bookended with Pulitzer wins.
That's right.
And
And we would like to, you know, there's many faces that we see on here that are familiar and names that are definitely familiar, but Derek Jackson is here. And like I said, Faith, this, you know, I mean, like we couldn't have gotten this book to the end. She's been there from the beginning. She was a soldier with us all the way through for 30 years. I mean, like, you know, she was amazing. And of course, my mother, just her, you know, she and my dad raised us to, you know, stick to it. And, you know, so we hope that she is, you know, happy with us getting, you know, hey mom, we got the Pulitzer, trying to do our best, you know. And, you know, but we're just, thank you, Richard, and to everyone. And please, anyone, if you don't have the book, please just buy the book, because I think that this book is it's a masterclass in journalism. It's a master work from my father. And, you know, you know, it's history. It's not simply a biography on Malcolm. It is a history book. But I mean, it's
our history,
right? But it's our father's. You know, it's his last work, and I mean, it's a culmination of 40 years in the industry of learning journalism. He's one of the founders of NABJ. I mean, he's a titan, and you know, the acknowledgements. You know, it puts him in his place. He's a titan among journalists. And, you know, we're just thankful for all of the accolades and, you know, and the slings and arrows that have come our way. And it's fine, because that's part of it. But I mean, like, there's been a lot of more, you know, positive, you know, feedback that has come our way. And we're very, very happy about that.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing that with us. Okay. We want to move along to the topic of investigative journalism. Is Mark Walker here? And the IRE folks? Do I see Mark? Okay, well, I don't see Mark, but I wonder whether, let's see, I see Cheryl was here.
And the new IRE director is here as well.
Oh, okay, good.
Hi, David, thank you. Hi, Richard. Diana.
Excellent, okay. Come on, Diana. Yes, good to see you.
How are you? Yes, it's been a fascinating conversation so far. Very interesting.
Yeah, I wonder whether you could just give us a little taste of what IRE is up to and is looking forward to in the next year.
Well, there's a lot of stuff going on, as you can imagine. Part of our big thing we're looking into right now is heading back into in-person, even though, of course, COVID is rising again. But we've got a DBEI symposium coming up in October. It's an extra conference for us. You know, normally we have NICAR, the computer assisted reporting, which is very, very nerdy, if you will. And then we've got the IRE conference, the annual conference, which we've already had both of those this year. But we're having an extra conference in October where we're going to be focusing specifically on diversity, belonging, equity and inclusion topics, still with the idea of hands-on with diversity issues, with how things, with how you use data to look into how we are covering the communities that we serve across the country. We are looking, as you all know, IRE has not always had the best reputation for that sort of thing, but we are changing. Our board is now, we've got about half of us now are diverse, and we're looking to increase that. And we're open for suggestions. We're always looking for ideas. We're still accepting ideas for panels for our session that's coming up in October. And we hope to see people there. It'll be in Baltimore, Maryland.
All right, very good, thank you. Cheryl, anything to add? Oh.
No, I think Diana covered it. Even though I have to correct, we are not nearly half of. You said the board was half diverse. There's
Seven and
not quite.
seven.
Not, but we're working on it. We continue to work on it, and we're happy to have Diana as executive director because she is our first person of color in that role. So we're really happy that she's here, and I'm sorry that Mark Walker is not here because he is my successor, and I look forward to him doing a terrific job.
Great.
Sorry, Richard, I just want to jump
Francisco,
in. Mark,
yes.
Yeah, hi, I'm Francisco, I'm a training director, and Cheryl and Diana are amazing trailblazers. Mark cannot join because he has a family emergency. Like his mom is currently getting some medical care, so he's sorry he can't make it. This just happened, so.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Well,
So
wish
anyway,
him the best.
And I think he's traveling for work too, so he's got a lot. He's juggling a lot.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask a very basic question then, and that is, why is it important to have diversity in investigative journalism, particularly?
Well, I'll let Diane answer that, but it's important to have diversity in journalism, period.
Right.
The numbers are really low in investigative journalism, and so we're hoping to change that. But you know, it should reflect the community, right? What we do. I mean, there's nothing better than having people who look like us reporting the news. And I don't know why it's always been a struggle to get Black and brown people in investigative journalism. I mean, depends on who you ask, but it has been a struggle, and particularly in management as well, but just in newsrooms in general. So we are doing a survey. We've teamed up with Ida B. Wells to do a survey to see who actually.
Yeah, Ida B. Wells Society.
Yeah, we're right. No, Ida B's like, no, I don't think she can. No, she, if she comes to this survey, like we're breaking news. But the Ida B. Wells, that's what we always call Ida B. The Ida B. Wells Society, we've teamed up, Eure has teamed up with them to do a survey to see exactly how many Black and brown investigative reporters are in newsrooms. So stay tuned for that. And Diana, I'll let you take it from there.
Well, I was going to say one of the big things that we care about, you know, Richard, is that diversity is more than just color. There's a lot more to it. There's spiritual, there's age, there's geography, there's spirituality, there's orientation. That's a big thing across the country. There's small places, there's small markets and big markets. It really matters. Investigative journalism is happening across the country. One of our biggest concerns, of course, is the news deserts that have erupted all over the place, just simply because of the nature of our business. There's fewer entities. Excuse me, my little cat wants to be in journalism. We have a lot of that, don't we? Photobombing here. They're very much, I do think it's very important that we all say this, that we need to reflect the communities we serve. The reason we need to do that is because we don't know what's going on. The type of corruption, the type of people that are out there, the voiceless. I mean, for many people, I know sometimes I felt very Pollyanna-ish, telling people in my later years when I was still a reporter and editor, telling people it matters to me that I go out and tell somebody what the 60-year-old señora that's still having to take care of her grandchildren and is having to take in wash because she has no job. She can't get a job anywhere because she's not very educated and no one is paying attention to her. She can't get help. She can't speak the language. She doesn't have online access. And yes, the council people are all lovely to say, hey, we got lots of help for her. Yeah, if she has an online site, if she had a computer, she could do it, but doesn't have that kind of help. And no one knows about those people if we're not out there talking to them. And if you don't have someone out there that can speak Spanish or Asian, if it's or Vietnamese, if you're out in a Vietnamese community, how do you find those people? And if you don't have a small newspaper out there in these small communities, how do you get to those people? So Eure, we've got a really good reputation for being out there and teaching people how to be investigative journalists. The reason I came on board here was because people cared about teaching investigative techniques to everybody. And I think that's what's important. In the old days, you know, we had lots of metro papers. Our founders were all mostly white men with a couple of good women like Mirta Pulliam, who were out there, who were fighting for it, who were fighting for the corruption, the old type sort of, you know, our Watergate stories, which are very important to our history as in America. That's all important. But nowadays, we got to go deeper. We have to go deeper. And to do that, we need to find the local people. And to do that, you don't need an investigative team. Every reporter can be an investigative reporter. They just need a little help. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us, especially us people of color, to help each other, find each other, and provide that help. We can all be mentors, and you don't need a big program to do that. Just reach out and talk to people, offer what you can, direct them to us, direct them to all the other programs. I mean, there's a lot of programs out there. I'm sorry, I'm getting on a soapbox. Forgive me, I get carried away.
You are. Don't do it, Diana. Don't do it. Don't jump.
I just think it's very important, you know, and I just think we have such an opportunity right now because everybody wants to help. You know, I think that with the racial reckoning we had last year, and which was a horrible, terrible thing to happen, but we do have an opportunity. And we have a lot of people that care out there of all colors, of all ages, that want to do something. And we can't let this opportunity slip by us. You know, things cycle all the time, and it feels like, I can remember when I was younger and during the 60s and the 70s, there were times that people would get real excited and want to do something and sometimes it happened and sometimes it didn't. This is our chance. This is our chance to grab and do something and reflect the communities we serve. The communities are so much bigger these days. We need to do something.
Well, let me just read. Well, is Nichelle Smith? Is your mic open?
She's still here.
I hear you. I'm listening to this and trying not to comment because I'm desperately trying to edit a story, but.
Oh, okay.
I had
well,
to.
You just wrote something in the chat, so tell everybody what you just wrote.
But I had to. There are things that I find myself having to comment on, especially as a person who's been wearing her hair natural for like 35 years and cut it last year when it was longer because pandemic. I didn't feel like prying the braids out of it, so I shaved it off. So anyway, moving on to this discussion, we're talking about investigative teams in particular, of which I was on one up until very recently. And the discussion of, you know, why Black people, brown people don't do investigations. Just to tell you anecdotally, I was talking to somebody who was recruiting a friend of mine. And this was for an investigative, like a top editor position. The white man who was talking to me for reference seemed baffled at the idea that he found himself in the position of talking to a really, really, really competent editor-in-chief prospect, be a Black woman. And he kept asking me, but to the effect of, you know, but can she do other things other than Black news? And can she stop being Black for 5 minutes to do investigative work? And I'm like, you know, first of all, if you're an investigative editor, if you're recruiting people for an editor's position, you're covering these issues and you're not talking to Black and brown people already, you're just doing it wrong. Because there are so many issues to come at, even if you're not a person of color. If you're going to talk about water issues, if you're going to talk about COVID, if you're going to talk about anything in the world, there's no corner of the world where Black people are sitting separately and not participating in the rest of the society. So that was number one. And number two, you can clearly see that she's a Black woman. There's no ambiguity, like people kind of squirrely get with me once in a while, but you can clearly see that this person is Black. You knew who you were talking to. How is it that you were expecting her to not at some point in the day be Black? It was just ridiculous. So we have to, the makeup of these teams and the culture cultivated on these teams. Investigative teams and newsrooms have been and still are in many cases good old boy clubs. They are cliques where people all from the same background and the same newsroom are sort of allowed to do whatever they feel like doing. They recruit all their friends and all their cronies, and then they're like, okay, we have to diversify. So let's bring Black people into the team. where you sit and have to navigate all these tight relationships that have already been created over years and years of different papers. And then you have to watch as, the same 2 or 3 people get the same 2 or 3 plum assignments and all the reporters diverted to them. And you're commenting, you're trying to make your way and say, well, we need to cover this and we need to cover that. And why don't we bring this person in? Why don't we bring that person in? So there's still very much, even though there are more of us in the game, I've enjoyed meeting Cheryl Thompson in particular and just chatting with her and watching her work. It's wonderful.
Oh, well, thank you. And can I say, Michelle, that we have to be our own best advocates, because
we do.
We really do. I mean, I spent 22 years at the Washington Post, and I don't know how many of those were on the investigative team, at least 6 to 8. And I was the only Black on the team at the time.
Exactly.
And now, and I remember once I had an editor say to me, and I'm not going to say who it was, said to me, and I think this person thought it was a compliment, and said, "Oh my God, you're like the best Black investigative reporter I've ever met." And I'm like, I think that's supposed to be a compliment, but it didn't come out that way. Why can't I just be the best investigative reporter? Why does,
exactly.
You don't have to tell me I'm Black.
Exactly. So we're still I totally agree with you, Cheryl. We have to, because so much of the time we are still the only one, or one of 2 people. And
I'm the only Black at NPR on the investigative team.
Yeah, exactly. So that's still at least part of the issue, not necessarily having that solidarity that you might have if you're in the news department or anywhere or sports or something like and just being able to make a network outside of that and bring those ideas in and keep pushing. It can be exhausting. It's not if you insist upon being on that team, but if you insist on being inquisitive and being an investigator, you can do that from anywhere, and you can just say, I'm just going to investigate this, and I'll work with whoever there is to work with. But
it took 42 years. It took 42 years before Eure had the first Black president, and that was me. And that was only 3 years ago.
Exactly.
And so that's why I'm so happy that Mark Walker is succeeding me, because it's like, okay, my whole point when running for the Eure board 6 years ago was to increase diversity, not only among our ranks, but on the board, because I was the one Black person on the Eure board, and there was an Asian woman and who left the board shortly after I arrived. And it was totally unacceptable. And so that was my purpose for running for the board and staying on there for 3 terms, was to increase diversity. And now we have 3 Black journalists on that board, one of whom is the new president, one of whom is a new vice president. So nothing could make me happier except to have some more people of color on there. And we have a Hispanic woman who's now on the board. And then we've got Diana. So slowly but surely,
and we have an Indian American, we have Nina, and then we have our first openly gay person too.
Well, thank you, Diana.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very diverse slate of workshops.
We do.
I was like, this was wonderful. This is like, it was like blacker than NABJ for a minute. Just
for a minute.
People that there were to learn from.
Yeah, for our speakers.
Okay, Corey Johnson has had his hand up, so let's see what Corey has to say.
Go.
Well, first I'd like to say Cheryl is the best Black investigative reporter probably on the planet, even though her point is well taken. I want just to enlarge.
Checks in the mail.
Thank you. I need the money. But I want to enlarge that point about diversity because it's more than just skin deep, as we know. It's really about experiences, life experiences. In many newsrooms, I'm the only person of color, Black person that's on that investigative team. And I can remember early in my career, I was doing stories exposing problems with policing, and the white colleagues in the newsroom, just said to me point blank, they didn't believe those stories, because why would police shoot someone unjustly?
And this is why they need Black people in investigative reporting, because
now this was
don't get it.
This was prior to the smartphone revolution, so this is prior to seeing these videos every day. And I said, I've been pulled over in every state I've ever lived in, and never got one ticket. I've had guns pulled on me for flagging the police down because my car was malfunctioning, and the police jumped out and made me get on the ground with guns pulled to my head. So I said, police do wacky stuff all the time, but if you've never lived that, you couldn't perceive that. And that's one of the strengths that diversity brings in this investigative space. Even diversity in gender. We all have seen these powerful Me Too stories with Henry Weinstein in the New York Times, but what kind of doesn't go equally heralded is a lot of people hadn't known about those allegations for years, but they couldn't get the women comfortable enough to go on the record or provide enough detail to prove it. And it was an all-woman team at the New York Times that connected to other women in order to bring those stories and drag them into the light. And so while we talk about that's the power of having different people at the table, different people with those skills, different people on those teams, because it's not just representation, but it's also the kind of stories that get told compared to the stories that get ignored.
Exactly. Okay, now we have David Boardman here, and I'm glad to have David from Temple University. He just made an announcement last week. Tell us about your announcement and more of what we need to know.
Thank you, Richard. Thanks for inviting me, and it's so great to see many longtime friends here. It's really fun. It actually is you all set me up perfectly actually with this last discussion, because we got a grant from the Jonathan Logan Family Foundation of Berkeley to the Klein College of Media and Communication, of which I'm the dean. I'm proud to say we are, I think, one of the nation's leaders among non-HBCU colleges in terms of diversity. 2 years ago, we won the top award in the country for equity and diversity, and in winning it and granting it to us, our peers at AEJMC cited not only the numbers of our student body and faculty, but said that the values of equity and diversity really course through our curriculum and our programs and everything that we do. Because of that, and my own background is very much as an investigative journalist. I was, like Cheryl, at one point, many years ago, a president of IRE. I have been troubled by many of these same issues, and thought, really focused on what could I and we do about it. And we had this idea to create an academic investigative center, and there are others at other universities. Cheryl works at one, but to create one that is specifically focused on the challenges of urban areas. And I'm going to read you just the first, real quickly, the first 5 goals of this Logan Center. 1, to produce a new generation of journalists experienced in investigative reporting and dedicated to using their experience to serve local communities, particularly for the benefit of historically underserved audiences. 2, to play a major role in increasing the diversity of investigative journalism. 3, to lead the way in redefining investigative reporting so that it is more equitable, inclusive, community serving, and solutions oriented. We'll do this through both practice and research. 4, to examine through journalism some of the most seemingly intractable issues of life in Philadelphia, including poverty, inequality, and violence, with the above values in mind. And then 5, to produce investigative journalism that will enrich understanding, change laws, and save lives in North Philadelphia and beyond. So they're lofty goals, but they fit in, I think, very much with this earlier discussion. We will be in the next week announcing posting jobs for our director and associate director. They will work closely with our rest of our faculty and with our students, both undergraduate and graduate students, to produce journalism and journalists that will do this, carry on this kind of work going forward. And I think, particularly, I love Nichelle's points and this notion, Dee talked about news deserts. We tend to think about news deserts being in rural areas or in small towns. And as many of us know, many news deserts are in urban neighborhoods that really aren't served by mainstream media except when there's some sort of sensational crime. And our intention very much is to work in those neighborhoods. We're right in North Philadelphia. I'm proud that we're working with people in the community. We have launched just in the past 2 years solutions-focused news sites in the Kensington and Germantown neighborhoods that began with us going out into the communities, asking them, what are your news and information needs, working with them to create these sites. And now we've handed those sites off to the community and they run them. So this will work very closely with that. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it and welcome ideas that you all have on how we may work with the students, and certainly we'll welcome your ideas on people who might be interested in working with and for us.
Great, great. Now I want to urge everybody to take advantage of the chat room to contact David or whoever else, since this is primarily a networking session. So so there it is. Derek, did you want to say?
I'll put my email in the chat.
Okay, good idea. Derek, did you want to say something, Derek Jackson?
Oh, well, I put it in the chat. I think the events of last year, and going back to the discussion on investigative journalism, you know, this is a great opportunity for us as people of color to redefine what is investigative journalism. I put it in, this anecdote is, you know, is about 40 years old, but when I was at my, at the Boston Globe, and I wrote columns on racism right out of the gate, an editor took me out to lunch and said, "That's nice. Is that all you can write? What else you got up your sleeve?" And I said to him point blank, and I guess, you know, one of those fight or flight response, I came up with the right thing at the right time. I said, well, you know, you wouldn't be asking that question of the reporters who cover Whitey Bulger and organized crime in South Boston. And you wouldn't ask that of your financial people covering whatever the hot story of the day was. I said, racism should be as valuable a beat as anything else at a newspaper. And he actually stopped in his tracks and had nothing to say after that. And I think the events of last year, another example, since several of you know, I write a lot about environmental justice. Even at this moment, we have this opportunity to redefine what environmentalism is. Right now, environmentalism and environmental justice are two different silos, at least in the white mind, and meaning nature, and I'm in both of them. This is a chance for, there's a lot of environmental groups, now closing this piece, there's a lot of environmental groups that want to do, quote, outreach to people of color to get them to participate in the outdoors and do all that, conservation. And I said, you cannot invite people of color out for the weekend if you are not full participants in what's happening in these communities Monday through Friday, in terms of pollution, toxic waste, asthma, and all that stuff. So in that area of investigative stuff, this is a prime opportunity propelled by the events of last year and frankly, the last 3-4 years, for us to redefine what is, quote, worthy of investigation.
All right, Ramon, and then Manny Smith.
I second what Derek said on those two issues. Those are huge issues. You know, you have to cover those now as beats. They can't be ad hoc and just reacting. So I wholly agree. You know, we spend a lot of money and time on investing in those two beats. I just wanted to add one thing, Richard, just from since this is a forum for networking and all that. You know, we just announced a week ago CNN Plus. For those of you who don't know, CNN Plus is our streaming service, which will be debuting next year. It's just so everyone knows, we're adding 450 jobs. It's a lot of jobs. It's everything from programming to technology, to engineers, but there's a lot of programming jobs in there, a lot of news jobs in there. And we'd love to hear, we have a massive, an aggressive strategy around, making sure that it looks like the world. There's a lot of diversity and strategy put into this, but we want even more help. So if you have any thoughts or ideas of people for the streaming service, either journalists or engineers or technologists or product people, 450 jobs, it's a great expansion and provides a lot of opportunities. So I would just urge all of you, please help us out. If you think people that are great, by all means, let me know about them.
Super. Okay, Manny.
Richard, thanks for inviting me. David, good to see you too. Listen, excited about your work at Temple. We're both here in Philly, and I know the amazing work you do. It kind of brings up a question though, which I always remember, right? I'm managing editor at my station here in Philly, and all I can just remember sometime is that Philly is my hometown, but no one ever talked to Manny in high school or any of those entry-level points about being a managing editor in the newsroom. Thank God for a couple of connections that got a chance for me to see that as a career. And so when we talk about wanting to cover communities or wanting more authentic coverage, that comes from people who kind of have street cred because they know the players, they know those places. David, you're on an urban campus. I drive through it every day to get to work. How do we start to have that conversation so that the candidates that we really want to reach, actually even consider this work as a career?
That's a great question and great to see you, Manny. I think part of it is we have to start very early, and we have started, as I think we've started a summer program that is specific outreach to high school students, primarily of color, to try to get them interested in this as a career. And I have to say, it seems like it's a particular challenge in the Latino community, even more than in the Black community, in terms of cultural issues around what somebody should do as a career. And the idea of journalism is just not on the radar for a lot of people in various Latino communities. So that's been a big focus of ours. But you're absolutely right. I mean, and our interest is to find people in these communities, engage with them, whether they are labeled journalists or they're just people in the community who are interested in the welfare of their communities and work with them.
Thanks.
Okay, very good.
Earlier, we had talked a little bit about the industry changing and everybody moving around, but I think there's opportunity for us in this space with a value add for the industry, where you tell someone from Philly, hey, you got to go to Ohio, 4 or 5 different other cities before you can do work here in some place. Well, what if we can create pipelines where you're not moving someone and then their connection to the work in the newsroom is a whole lot different.
I agree. And I think one of the great things that has happened just over the last year, those of us who work primarily in local news, and I was the editor of the Seattle Times before I came to Temple. I think the journalism world and the rest of the world is finally waking up to the crisis in local news and how important local news is. And I think a lot of great journalists won't necessarily be looking, as they have so much in the past, to I got to get to New York, I got to get to Washington. No, I love this city, Philadelphia, Cleveland, Kansas City, wherever it is, and I want to help make this community better. And we have to help them have opportunities to do that.
Hear, hear. Okay, I think that's it for the investigative portion. We want to introduce ourselves. Unfortunately, some people had to leave, so that makes it easier. We don't have to listen to. We don't have to make time for as many people. So let's just start off. On my screen, we have Manny Smith. Introduce yourself, Manny.
Hey, everybody. This is my first time being invited. I'm absolutely bowled over tonight. I'm a managing editor here at CBS 3. Philly's my hometown, as I mentioned before. Kind of worked around NBC and Fox for a little while before I came here to kind of lead coverage. I was a former chapter president of the Philly Association of Black Journalists and the current candidate for the National Association of Black Journalists. I wholeheartedly believe that, communities of color are stronger when we own the stories that are for and about us. and really look forward to encouraging opportunities for us to grow in traditional newsrooms, but also find pathways for us to be able to do it.
Okay, thank you, Manny. We're going to keep these as short as we can. Corey Johnson. We already heard from Ramon. Yeah. Corey, are you still there?
Yes, sir. Hi, Corey Johnson, investigative reporter at the Tampa Bay Times newspaper, and as always, glad to be here. Thank you for the stimulating conversation, as always.
Okay. Eric Deggans.
Woohoo!
Hi, Eric Deggans, TV critic for NPR, chair of the Media Monitoring Committee for the National Association of Black Journalists, adjunct teacher at Duke, media analyst for NBC and NBC News. Yes, I have a lot of jobs. So,
and also a previous speaker at our
and previous speaker.
Exactly.
I'm just so pleased to be able to hang out with you guys. This is so much fun.
All right, glad to have you. All right, Tanette Ely.
Am I unmuted? Okay. Hi, I am so many jobs. A former reporter and columnist for the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Currently, I'm a journalism educator for the University of Wisconsin, and I'm also vice president of the Wisconsin Black Media Association.
Thank you. Atiba Rogers.
Hi, good night. I'm a freelancer, and right now I write for Pop Sugar and Global Voices Online, and I'm currently located in Bradenton, Florida.
Okay. Nichelle Smith.
Hi, I'm Nichelle Smith. I am the enterprise editor for Racism and History at USA Today. And I've been on, I think, every team there, including investigations and news. I want to take a minute to promote my new project. It's called Never Been Told, The Lost History of America's People of Color. And we just published a story today about Melvin McNair, one of the hijackers of the 1972 Delta Flight 847 hijacked to Algiers so they could join the Black Panthers. And he has not told his story to US media until he told it to us. So I'll drop it in the chat, and thanks very much for your time.
God, I remember that incident too. That's something. Diego, first timer.
Yes, thank you for inviting me. I'm an assistant editor on the Metro desk of the New York Times, and oversee a small team of reporters who cover a variety of topics, from real estate, transportation to infrastructure. So we're right now very much focused on the recovery of New York from the pandemic, and I'm also a co-chair of the Latino affinity group at the New York Times, and so playing a small role in the company's diversity, inclusion, and equity efforts. So glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
That's great. Okay, that's great. Francisco Vera-Horta.
Hi, I'm Francisco Vera-Horta. I'm a training director at Eure, and just thanks, Richard, for inviting me for years. I remember when this is in person. So I'm in San Antonio now, and it's great to see everyone.
Great. And Derek, I think we know who you are, but you can say it again.
Hi, Derek Jackson, writer for Union of Concerned Scientists, grist.org, The American Prospect, ESPN's The Undefeated, and I had the wonderful privilege of having Jamal and Tammy's father be my boss for many years.
All right. Okay, Leon Carter.
Good to join this great discussion on a busy sports night. I may be the only sports person on here. Shout out to Derek. Also shout out to Les Payne's children. We both, well, I do miss him, knowing him from my days at Newsday. I am the editorial director of The Athletic, editorial director and talent director, formerly of ESPN, former sports editor of the New York Daily News, and also co-director of the Sports Journalism Institute, which helps college kids get into our profession.
Hear, hear. Okay, thanks, Leon. Cheryl Thompson, I think you told us, but you can tell us again.
I'm Cheryl W. Thompson. I'm an investigative correspondent and senior editor for Station Investigations at NPR. And I'm also associate professor of journalism at George Washington University. And I'm a proud Chicagoan.
Oh, all right. Gloria, is that you? I just see the number.
That's me. That is me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Gloria Minot, formerly of WHUR and WPFW Pacifica.
All right, very good. Elliot Francis.
Richard, hi everybody. Elliot Francis, former news anchor, reporter for 45 years for major cities, for many years, including CNN some years ago, certainly some years before you arrived, Ramon. Most recently with Westwood One News, currently producer and host of the live streamed Now with Elliot Francis on Facebook and YouTube. Great discussion today. Thank you very much.
All right. Barbara Reynolds. We're going to skip over Diana and David.
Hi, everybody. So glad to see you. I was former editorial board member at USA Today. I'm the writer of 8 books, the latest memoirs, Coretta Scott King. I have 2 projects going, both of them in theology and technology. And I was a scholar at several universities and writer now for Tri-City Newswire.
Okay, iReporter.
Hi, my name is iReporter. This is my first time here. Thanks for having me. Formerly of the Philadelphia Inquirer, from Philly, Germantown, and the News Journal. It's great to see everybody. A million years ago when I was a student at Howard, I remember Mr. Jackson about 20 or so years ago speaking to us. I had an internship at the Boston Globe.
All right.
And I think Diego was one of the editors on the city desk that year too. So good to see everybody.
Excellent, excellent. All right, Lynn Adrian.
Hi, I'm Lynn Adrian. I'm the director of the DC Graduate Capstone Program in Broadcast and Digital Journalism for the Newhouse School at Syracuse. Longtime ABC News senior producer. Also repping for Lilia Bundles, who had to jump off beforehand, and she was chomping at the bit to get into the conversation about hair, because if you don't know Lilia, you may not know that she is the great-great-granddaughter of Madam C.J. Walker, and she, among her other titles, is a hair historian. But I wanted to mention Lilia because we were at ABC News at the same time when Lilia was the deputy bureau chief. I was senior producer for Morning News, and the late Lynn Luke Branch was the vice president at the bureau. The 3 of us had each other's back. I'm just thinking about how important that's going to be for this next generation of broadcast news executives, network broadcast news executives, as they're going forward, because you need somebody to have your back and go to and make you know that you aren't crazy when the crazy comes to you.
Mm-hmm. I know that's right. Sharon Farmer.
Power to the people, power to Southeast people, and may the revolution continue. Thank you very much.
Eleanor Vega.
Hi there. Thank you, Richard, for the invitation. It's been a great discussion.
Good.
I was the bureau chief for CBS News for many years, and started out in Spanish television, working for Univision and Telemundo, and was one of the first Latinas to cross over to English from Spanish. Being bilingual and bicultural has allowed me to jump both Spanish and English markets for different opportunities. And currently I'm taking a break from working the high stress network news, and I'm doing a lot of volunteering for passion opportunities, such as volunteering at the migrant center in Pomona on the West Coast for all the kids that are crossing the border. So it's been great having this time that I never used to have.
All right. I can't see who this is with the iPhone. iPhone 2, it says. Who's got the iPhone? Okay, we'll just come back to you then. Ron Taylor. Ron, you still there? Unmute?
I am.
Okay.
I'm Ron Taylor. I'm a copy editor for the Washington Informer in Southeast Washington. And Dick and I go back many years.
Yes.
Great discussion.
All right, very good. Going to the next screen there. Let's see who we haven't heard from yet. Okay, Shirley Carswell. Shirley?
Hi.
Yes.
Hi, everybody. Glad to be here. I'm Shirley Carswell. I'm the executive director of the Dow Jones News Fund, which is a program that encourages journalism, tries to get college and even high school students interested in journalism as a career. We provide internships and training. And before that, I was at teaching journalism at Howard University. And before that, I was for many, many years an editor at the Washington Post.
All right. Bonita Bing.
Yeah, sure, good people.
Bonita.
Yes. Sorry about that. Hi, I'm Bonita Bing, president of the Exposure Group, African American Photographers Association, and also owner of Tolbert and Bing Studios, located in the Brooklyn, Northeast DC area, and the producer helping out Richard with the Zoom.
Very good. Thank you, Bonita. Andrea Smith. Oh, let me unmute you. Okay, Andrea, can you hear us?
I can hear you. I'm just trying to get my camera on here.
Okay. There you are.
Hi, my name is Andrea Smith, and I'm a current student at Clark Atlanta University, and I'm just here tonight. It's my first time being on this call, and I'm here kind of helping out Richard.
Okay, thanks. Welcome. And I see a phone number here, but not the name. I guess it must be hard on some phones to that name in. So I can't call on you unless you want to volunteer who you are. Okay. All right. I think we've exhausted that, and we still have a few more minutes we've allotted for discussion. If anybody wants to return to any of the subjects we talked about tonight, or maybe even introduce some new ones, this is the time to do it.
Hey, Richard, if I may,
Yes.
I want to say, I'm Jamal Payne. I'm Les Payne's son.
Yes.
But I work for Major League Baseball Network and NHL Network. I'm a manager of production media management. So I just wanted to let Leon know he's not the only sports person on the call. Got some other sports here too.
Okay, very good. All right, anyone else? Okay, so I guess we've exhausted all those issues, which is good. There will be a copy of the chat box distributed to everybody who's on the call. And I also want to hope to see, thanks for everybody for coming, of course. Our next one, our August roundtable will be on Sunday afternoon, August 22nd. And we expect to have Karine Jean-Pierre, who is the Deputy White House Press Secretary, who you may have seen about a month ago, actually leading the press conference. I think she's next in line for that job. So that should be interesting. And we want to congratulate the two African-American women who were just named editors, top editors of newspapers in Texas. So both of them will be here. They say that we can toast them and talk to them about that. We're talking about Maria Reeve at the Houston Chronicle, and who was there? Catrice Hardy. Right, who was at the Indianapolis Star and is going to the Dallas Morning News. So we'll get a chance to chat with them and congratulate them and wish them well. So with that, unless anybody else does anything else, we'll adjourn till the next time, and thank all of us. Oh, Eric, did you want to say something? Oh, you just wanted to wave. Okay, all right. So thank everybody. And good to see you, and have a good evening. Thanks very much.